But if you're in prison, you can run for president. And that's a good thing. No, I'm not even joking when I say this. Like, I think it's a good thing. It's a great thing. I'm saying it. All right, let's get to Donald Trump dub. The Supreme Court has agreed to keeping Trump on the Colorado ballot and rejecting the 14th Amendment push.
What do we know right now?
Which was, of course, expected, unless you were super libbed up and super primed into believing that it somehow wasn't going to happen, the most likely thing that was going to happen.
Now.
A really consequential decision has just been handed down. Paula Reed, the court has made a decision.
This is a win for former President Trump. Here, the Supreme Court has reversed a ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court that would have removed former President Trump from the ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the so-called insurrectionist ban. Now, this is very much what we expected based on what we saw about a month ago during oral argument. Justices on both sides of the aisle appeared skeptical of Colorado's argument that Trump could be removed by the state under the 14th Amendment. So this is a huge win. It means that former President Trump will appear on the primary ballot. And this applies not only to Colorado, but also to states across the country. Because as we've seen, many states have tried this way of removing Trump from the ballot. It was considered a novel, long shot way to bump Trump out of eligibility for the White House. But we've only seen Colorado, Maine, and Illinois actually remove him. But here, the Supreme Court, as you know, the final word on constitutional questions, saying no, it is up to Congress, not the states, to do this. So an enormous win for former President Trump.
This is so significant, Paula. We knew in the 2.5-hour argument that was had that they were leaning in this direction. They asked the question, if you remember the moment in time of, well, why should Colorado be the one to decide for the rest of the nation a matter of such consequence? And there was some pushback on whether a state could actually do this. It seems like they want Congress to actually make the decision because of ambiguity, maybe a little bit of vagueness, but this is very important because
CNN is such dog shit. They're basically Fox News now. Guys, come on. It would have been ridiculous to be able to take Trump off the ballot. Like regardless of the legalese surrounding it and regardless of the content that it potentially creates because of the chaos, it's like wild that if that were to follow. Shut the fuck up, chatters. The objective standard is literally that taking Trump off the ballot is unconstitutional. Yeah, it's just like, it's one of the few good things about America is that you can literally be on the ballot even if you're in prison. Like, we don't even allow prisoners to vote. We don't allow former prisoners to vote that are no longer prisoners. But if you're in prison, you can run for president. And that's a good thing. Okay? No, I'm not even joking when I say this. Like, I think it's a good thing. It's a great thing. I think we should have more of that way of thinking in the United States of America. For example, what I mean by that is allowing prisoners to vote would be good. Allowing felons to vote would be good. Felony vote restoration is a major, major issue in this country. So, we should be moving in the opposite direction. Of course, if this wasn't Trump and it was like some fucking socialist dude that was like genuinely popular, let's say, like a Eugene Debs type situation, I feel like the Supreme Court now would probably rule against him. But because it's Trump, of course they're going to defend him. But it doesn't matter. The constitutionality of it still holds, and it makes sense.
he was already still on the ballot, as you know. But the idea of them saying this is for Congress to look at, not us, means they don't want politics in the Supreme Court right now.
That's exactly right. And even though I'm sure they'd love to avoid all of these Trump-related cases, this is the first of at least two big Trump.
You hear another audio when the video plays because they're outside and there's people talking behind them.
Cases they're taking down.
Audio perverts are now doing audio pervertry for CNN's audio. I'm losing my mind, dude. It's like, it's so funny. We've now gotten to the point where you're doing audio pervertry for CNN's coverage, dude. Audio files. Stop it. Cease and desist.
Immunity is still on the horizon.
Exactly. In a month and a half, we'll be back on April 22nd. They're going to hear oral arguments about whether former President Trump has immunity to protect him from the special counsel's federal election subversion case. But let's look at the timing here, right? It was almost a month ago that we were here for oral arguments. This was a case that they were considering on an expedited basis. I don't know about you, but I was a little surprised that it took them a month to unanimously do what we expected them to do.
Especially because they took the case up very quickly, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't that they were, in the case of immunity, they said 7 weeks from now we'll hear something. In this case, they said we're going to hear it pretty quickly. They had a pretty easy turnaround. But this is the day before Super Tuesday as well. He's already on the ballot. As you mentioned, other states are wanting to see if they have a leg to stand on here. But Paula, the idea that the Supreme Court was going to make this decision was not so shocking. But they took that case up in the first instance, or some was surprising.
It was surprising because so many people thought this was such a novel legal theory that you weren't really going to successfully be able to remove Trump based on this obscure provision of the 14th Amendment that was enacted after the Civil War. But then we saw in the state of Colorado, even the courts within that state were split on whether this applied to presidents. But once you got that Supreme Court, a Colorado ruling that removed him, it really seemed inevitable that the Supreme Court would have to take this up, because even in states that had tried this and they didn't remove him, they left the door open. And without the Supreme Court clarifying this question, we would likely see litigation and arguably a lot of chaos and confusion throughout the presidential contest. So this also, of course, applies to the general election. And for anyone that's confused, former President Trump will appear on primary ballots, and assuming he is the nominee, as we expect him to be, on the general election ballot. Very much expected, but an enormous win for the former president.
It really is. And remember, to go back, it was a trial court in Colorado who made a finding surrounding insurrection without having an actual jury trial. He has not been charged with insurrection, not been convicted of insurrection in a criminal proceeding. The Colorado Supreme Court was the one that said, yes, actually he should be removed from the actual ballot. Now, Paula, though, this is going to suggest that because there's been no finding, there's been no ruling or conviction, this might stand across the nation.
Yeah, that's what we expect, that this will be the final word. Because again, when you saw even within the state of Colorado, the courts didn't agree, but the highest court did remove him. We also saw in Maine, they removed him, and Illinois as well. But one of the many arguments that Trump's lawyers made when they were here at the Supreme Court is that they insist that he didn't engage in an insurrection. And as you remember, the justices kind of stayed away from mentioning the former president's name, but also this larger question of insurrection. Instead, it appears that they focused more on whose role is it to determine who gets removed from a ballot. And here, not surprisingly, they determined that it is Congress, not the states, that can remove potential candidates from the ballot.
Jim, a really consequential moment today. The Supreme Court finding that he should still be on the ballot, will still be on the ballot, has not been disqualified. And again, they found the exit ramp that many thought they were looking for. It was apparent.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura and Paula, and they're doing this on the eve of Super Tuesday, which makes sense, and I guess gives us some sense that the Supreme Court is looking at the political calendar, not just the legal calendar. All right, Laura and Paula, thank you. Let me go. Joan Biskupik is on set with us, as well as Dana Bash and Ellie Honig. Joan, your sense of this?
Well, first of all, it's 9-0 to reverse the Colorado Supreme Court. So.
There's a fundamental dichotomy between Trump and Debs, which was that Debs was literally convicted of a crime while Trump was not convicted of being an insurrectionist. No. What I'm simply stating is, even when you are convicted of a crime, you can still run, and that's a good thing. I'm saying that even in the most extreme scenario where you are convicted of a crime and you're serving a prison sentence, you can still run for president, and I think that's a good thing. I like that. I'm saying that this would be scaling back the allowances of the law in the opposite direction. And I don't think that that's valid. I don't think it's a good thing at all.
Former President Donald Trump will remain on the ballot and other state ballots.
You don't have to be convicted of an insurrection. The Supreme Court of Colorado is able to make that determination. It don't matter.
But the justices actually split on how far to go. The majority decision, written as a per curiam, likely by the Chief Justice of the United States because it's unsigned, gives much more authority to Congress about when someone should be disqualified. And Justices Barrett, and then the three liberals write separately. And what's key here is
do you have to be convicted of an insurrectionist to be deemed an insurrectionist in the eye of the law? No, they'll say that plenty of people were not convicted as an insurrectionist after the Civil War, but were branded as such. which I don't think is a good standard to apply outside of the Civil War. That's what I think. Like, I don't care about the precedent that you think that you think exists in this circumstance. I do, however, believe that if it wasn't Trump, I don't think that it would have. If it was like someone who is genuinely presenting an issue, if someone was genuinely like presenting an issue to the pre-existing hierarchies, like if it was like a Bernie Sanders, but like even more popular, and he was like being investigated for seditious conspiracies, then I do think that they would have made sure that Bernie couldn't be on the ballot. Obviously, this is a pure hypothetical, and no such thing exists. But overall, as it stands, this was a good decision, in my opinion. I don't think that that's something that we should be. That is something that we should be doing. Is like taking people off the ballot.
Justice is. I'm listening to two different things. Excuse me
That's
for a second.
Okay. It happens.
I was listening to two different conversations, but I'll listen to ours first.
Please.
Okay, this is the important part, that even though they came out and gave us something unanimous that's very useful in the political scheme, especially for tomorrow, for Super Tuesday, it shows how divided the Supreme Court still is, because the three liberals broke off and said, you majority are going too far in terms of how you would dictate the rules for future disqualifications. And again, it was the three liberals specifically writing on this, Justice Sotomayor, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and our newest Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, Justice Barrett, one of Donald Trump's appointees, the third one, in fact, split off a bit.
I feel like this also shows like how much media narratives change the minds of people, because like even the liberal justices are in agreement on the standard here, and yet like there are still people even in this community that are like oh, actually that, like I don't care. You know what I mean? It's crazy. I guess maybe they're just motivated.
Also, but not joining the liberals.
Interesting. And Ellie, I just want to read, it looks like page 13 of this. It says, for the reasons given, responsibility for enforcing Section 3 against federal office holders and candidates rests with Congress and not the states.
Right.
The judgment of the Colorado Supreme Court therefore cannot stand. So they're saying essentially that Congress has to make this decision whether there are insurrectionists who need to be kept off of ballots. Is that essentially what they're saying here?
Essentially what they're saying is it's up to Congress to tell us how this works. So if Congress had, let's say 50 years ago, Congress had passed a law saying we're going to let the states do it, so long as they abide by due process, then what Colorado did would have been fine. But Congress has done essentially nothing in the 150 years since the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868. Now, I want to make sure people understand this. It's a very important feature of this decision. There is no substantive discussion in here by the Supreme Court of whether Donald Trump did or did not engage in insurrection.
Interesting.
Who should be able to vote? Who should not be able to vote? I think everyone should be able to vote. Literally everyone. Every single person that is an American citizen should be allowed to vote. Yes, that even includes convicted pedophiles. Okay? What do you think? Do you think they're gonna vote to lower the age of consent? Is that what you think is gonna go? Is that what you think is gonna happen? The only people that get to successfully do that already are like not even convicted pedophiles, but just Republicans. Okay, kids? No. Come on, guys. No. As long as you're above the age of 18. Okay, Jesus Christ. Even lower it, 16. Voting age, nothing else. Don't get any fucking weird ideas. Criminals are gonna vote to legalize murder. Yeah, that's what they're gonna do. Yeah, the unconvicted pedophiles are the ones who get to make those decisions anyway. You know, don't come crying to me when they make murder legal. Yeah, they're gonna vote. They're gonna vote to make the top of the hour ad breaks illegal, and then I'll be crying. You know, the unsubscribed masses are gonna get together and be like, Hasan, don't serve us a 3-minute ad break at the top of the hour. And to them, I say, well, sucks to suck. This is not a democracy, and there is a 3-minute ad break. This is going to get clipped. I fucking hate it. What? My statement that every person, even convicted criminals, should have a right to vote? Well, that's a position that I genuinely believe. So I don't care if they clip it and get mad at me for it. Remember, I don't get mad when clippers clip things in context. If it's an unpopular position, but I genuinely believe it, I will stand by it stubbornly, and I will fight it tooth and nail. like the America deserved 9/11 moment that was bastardized by Clippers, but it was still in line with my opinions. Okay. They massaged it to make it seem like it's that I said that it was good that civilians died or some shit. I don't believe that, obviously. I do believe that prisoners should be able to vote. I think it's ridiculous that they do not. Anyway, yeah. It's when something I said is misconstrued or clipped out of context that frustrates me.
There is no conversation about what the meaning of his words at the rally were, or what happened inside the Capitol, or any of Donald Trump's actions. That's not what the Supreme Court has done here. That's not what the Supreme Court typically does. This is a procedural, legalistic decision. And essentially, if I had to boil it down to one sentence, it would be, it's up to Congress, not the individual
They didn't
states.
want a big messy situation where all the states go here and there and that sort of thing.
The word I circled in this decision is, quote, patchwork. They said, we don't want a patchwork where one state's doing one thing and another state's doing another.
But you know Donald Trump better than most, covered him for many years, as a reporter, covering him as a politician and as a figure who takes things and will turn them the way that he wants America and the world to see them. Yeah. I will be shocked if Donald Trump doesn't, as soon as he can, get out there and argue not only that the Supreme Court is behind him, but he's probably going to argue, even though there's nothing in here that specifically says, as Ellie so importantly pointed out, anything about what happened on January 6th. It's just procedural about whether the states or Congress have a right. He will claim victory, and I'm guessing he will do it in a more broad way than this decision actually says.
Yeah, and Joan, I mean, there are countless Americans out there who believe that the Supreme Court just bailed out Donald Trump here, and that they're going to bail him. They might bail him out again on the immunity issue, which I know a lot of folks feel like that's not going to happen. But the fact that can got kicked down the road means that the January 6th trial may not happen in federal court.
And what you're referring to there is the fact that the justices have scheduled an oral argument for the week of April 22nd on whether Donald Trump should be immune from criminal prosecution for election subversion. But let me just...
Yes, the immunity issue is significantly more important. And I think that the fact that they pushed it back implies that they're probably not going to... that's the greatest layup that they can give to Donald Trump, which implies that their decision is going to be that he is not immune. Does that make sense? Because I feel like if they were going to find him immune, which would be insane. Like, that is literally the one thing the one good thing that the United States of America was built on. Many of the other foundational principles are bad, white supremacy, genocide of the native population, chattel slavery. These are very bad principles that the United States was founded on. The one W that we have, 1776 all day, baby, is that we are not a fucking monarchy. Okay? So giving the president king-like powers over the law is insane. It is just like, I don't think you can find one goddamn American that would agree with that position unless they're like fucking totally just lost in the sauce. It is literally the one thing that is so principally un-American. Law tip, apparently the PDF metadata on the decision lists the liberals writing a dissent in part. Roberts probably pressured them to concur to a 9-0 to maintain institutional legitimacy, or what's left of it. A little bit of palace intrigue for you. Oh, shit. You really think sugar baby Clarence Thomas is going to rule against Trump on the immunity thing? It doesn't matter. I don't care what fucking one justice says. Overall, there's no way. Especially considering that, like, this opens up full-blown immunity to every president. Like, I don't know how you can massage your way out of that to, like, make a specific carve-out just for Trump, which would mean that a president... No, it doesn't matter that the court is stacked, guys. No. There are instances where it is... Like, the impact of a decision like that would be far more damning. Like I said, Biden could just like go and assassinate Trump then. Okay, sick.
Tell you what concerned the three liberals about this ruling and how far the majority went. And just reading it now, their concern was that the majority went further than they needed for this particular case and essentially is over-favoring Donald Trump. Ultimately, under the guise of providing a more, quote, complete explanation for the judgment, the majority resolves many unsettled questions about Section 3, that's Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the anti-insurrectionist ban. It forecloses judicial enforcement of that provision, such as might occur when a party is prosecuted by an insurrectionist and raises defense on that score. I mean, it's the language hints of what's happening with Donald Trump right now. So I think that's their concern, is that the fuller majority has gone further. Now, this is a concurrence.
So Donald Trump has enough riz to stay on the ballot? Gyat. Yep. Donald Trump has the gyat to stay on the ballot. Here is our big, beautiful boy, our glorious former President Trump, reacting to the Supreme Court decision, okay, in front of many flags. Let me tell you, many flags, the biggest and boldest and most beautiful flags you've ever seen. It's got the gold outline, which means this is Admiralty Court.
Well, thank you very much.
Maritime Admiralty Court for my sovereign citizens. I am a sovereign citizen myself.
I want to start by thanking the Supreme Court for its unanimous decision today. It was a very important decision. We're very well crafted, and I think it will go a long way toward bringing our country together, which our country needs. And they worked long, they worked hard, and frankly, they worked very quickly on something that will be spoken about 100 years from now and 200 years from now. Extremely important. Essentially, you cannot take somebody out of a race because an opponent would like to have it that way. And it has nothing to do with the fact that it's the leading candidate, whether it was the leading candidate or a candidate that was well down on the totem pole. You cannot take somebody out of a race. The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that, and the Supreme Court saw that very well. And I really do believe that will be a unifying factor, because while most states were thrilled to have me, there were some that didn't, and they didn't want that for political reasons. They didn't want that because of poll numbers, because the poll numbers are very good. We're beating President Biden in almost every poll. New York Times came out yesterday with a very big poll for us. So they didn't like that, and you can't do that. You can't do what they tried to do. And hopefully Colorado, as an example, will unify. I know there's tremendous support. They brought our support up very strong in Colorado, because people in Colorado thought that was a terrible thing that they did. And while we're on the subject, and another thing that will be coming up very soon will be immunity for a president, and not immunity for me, but for any president. If a president doesn't have full immunity, you really don't have a president, because nobody that is serving in that office will have the courage to make, in many cases, what would be the right decision, or it could be the...
That's insane. I love that he's like, okay, this one decision is good, which is why I should get immunity. Presenting it as like, dude, oh my God. Supreme Court gives Trump immunity from criminal prosecution. Trump wins the election, pardoned himself, regardless of what the investigation, regardless of what the previous investigations or the previous court cases conclude. Okay. Then it's just like however many term limits he wants, baby. What are you going to do? He's above the law. America reaches its darkest hour.
The wrong decision. It could be in some cases.
Trump wants to be the Muad'Dib. He is the Muad'Dib for HVAC business owners.
It's the wrong decision, but they have to make decisions, and they have to make them free of all terror that can be rained upon them when they leave office, or even before they leave office. And some decisions are very tough. I can tell you that as a president, that some decisions to make are very tough. I took out ISIS, and I took out some...
Why do you hit that terror like he's JFK?
Very big people from the standpoint of a different part of the world. Two of the leading terrorists, probably the two leading terrorists ever that we've ever seen in this world. And those are big decisions. I don't want to be prosecuted for it. Another president wouldn't want to be prosecuted for it. It had a tremendously positive impact. It stopped everything cold. And sometimes you have to make, they were tough decisions. Sometimes you have to make decisions like that. when you make a decision, you don't want to have your opposing party or opponent or even somebody that just thinks you're wrong bring a criminal suit against you or any kind of a suit when you leave office. I have that right now at a level that nobody's ever seen before. I have rogue prosecutors and I have rogue judges. I have judges that are out of control. And it's a very unfair thing for me, but serving perhaps as a sample to others of what should not be happening when you make good decisions. And in my case, the economy was great. We didn't go into any wars. We totally defeated ISIS. We provided the largest tax cuts in history. We provided the largest regulation cuts in history. But think of it, no wars. We beat ISIS 100% of the caliphate. And there were no wars. We did a job that was great, but maybe I wouldn't have done that. The caliphate, defeating them, was very powerful. It was going to take 4 years. It took me 4 months. But it was a very strong dictum that I gave. I said, get them, defeat them, end it. We were fighting for 20 years against ISIS, and we did it very quickly. I don't want to be prosecuted. In that case, it worked out very well. There will be some things that perhaps don't work out so well, but I don't want to be prosecuted because I decided to do something that is very much for the good of the country and actually for the good of the world. A president shouldn't have that on his mind, and he has to have a free and clear mind when he makes very big decisions. Or it's going to be nothing more than a ceremonial post. You'll be president, it'll be a wonderful thing, and you won't do anything because you don't want to be hit by your opponent or hit by somebody else, because who wants to leave office and go through what I've gone through? I'm being prosecuted by Biden, my opponent, because every one of these things, whether it's Fannie Willis or Bragg, these are local and state, but they're in total coordination with the White House. You can't do that. It shouldn't be done. I mean, a thing like that. In the case of the DA's office, they put one of the top people, maybe the second person, in the Manhattan DA's office to get Trump. They had a Hillary Clinton lawyer leave the law firm, very prestigious big law firm, leave the law firm to go into the DA's office to get Trump, Pomerantz, Mr. Pomerantz. So he goes in to become a prosecutor.
This should have been a 1 minute video. And I was wondering why it was a 12-minute video. And then I realized that he's just rambling on about, we're halfway through the yapathon.
Prosecutor worked for the Democrat Party and Hillary Clinton, goes in to prosecute Donald Trump at a local level in total coordination with the Department of Justice, meaning Biden. And then you have the Fannie.
No, he is a YouTuber at heart, dude. He's a YouTuber at heart, baby. Let me tell you. He's trying to hit that 10 minutes so he can get the ad rev. He's trying to sneak in a mid-roll.
Willis, or as she would say, Fani, F-A-N-I, but Fani.
34 getting 50
and
with another 50 big
hired
ones.
somebody, knew the person long before this horrible prosecution took place, and she went out and she paid him an unbelievable amount of money, more money than he ever had dreamt possible, much more money than other people that do that for a living. He never did it at all, had no experience in it at all, and they had obviously a conflict. We don't have to go into that, but they were able to get a lot of money because it was a high-profile person. Me, I'm a very high-profile person. So they were able to pay him close to $1 million when he was not equipped to do the job, and she's not equipped to do the job, and that case should end immediately. That case is so conflicted, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And then you have deranged Jack Smith, who's a Trump hater and represents all the Trump haters, and he's going wild. He's just a wild man. He's been overturned unanimously by the Supreme Court. Went after other people over the years. He's had great failure, but he's mean, he's nasty, he's unfair, and the judges on these cases, they're all Trump haters. Other than we have maybe one or two that I think can be fair. But you look at New York, what's happened. I mean, these people have tremendous hatred. You can't do this to a president. And again, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about in the future. A president has to be free. A president has to be, if the president does a good job, I did. Some people would say a great job. But if the president does a good job, a president should be free and clear and frankly celebrated for having done a good job. Not indicted.
President should be celebrated. It is now going to be illegal not to celebrate me in my second term. Once I assume the role of president once again, if you're not celebrating me, you're going to jail. I mean, the third hype train level 5 achieved. Jesus Christ.
Did 4 times and not gone after on a civil basis and not demanded to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in fines on something that was absolutely perfect, where there were no victims, where the financial statements were absolutely flawless, where you have disclaimer clauses. I mean, nobody's ever had a thing like this. I wasn't given a jury, and I had a clubhouse judge just come up with this number on a perfect loan and very conservative financial statements. But even at that, if you look, the disclaimer says don't rely on the financial statements in any way, shape, or form. Go out and do your own work. The bank in question had the most sophisticated lawyers in the world, frankly, one of the top law firms anywhere in the country.
Now he's jumping on the fucking the banking case. Just like, all right, boring. Don't care about that.